Welcome to today's broadcast. My name is Colleen Patterson, and I'm the Director of Employer Services and Compliance at Savoy. Joining me today is Wendy Ebner, who is Vice President of Business Development at Savoy. I got to tell you, I am really excited for our conversation today, and here's why. As our communities and our businesses reopen and we are all finding our way and determining what the new normal means for our professional lives, today's topic, in my opinion, is priceless as it's invaluable information to our future success. And I'm referring to a new CE class that Wendy recently instructed called Healthy Habits of Highly Effective Brokers. The feedback that we have received from our broker partners has been absolutely tremendous. So I thought that it would be great to continue the conversation. There are certain factors that go into a better mindset and in turn, certainly better performance. And these habits, they're not necessarily new or revolutionary, but they're really clarifications and reiterations of rock solid principles. And it's being presented in a format that I think is easy to understand. So getting us started, Wendy, here's my first question for you today. Even though we're talking about habits, it kind of sounds a lot like skill set. Would you elaborate more?
Sure. Thank you, Colleen. This is a really exciting topic for me and one that I'm very passionate about. Having worked with brokers now for over 30 years, it has allowed me to see themes in behavior, and it really does come down to two buckets of skill sets needed to be successful. They're hard skill sets and soft. So hard skills are the obvious. This is your product, your technical, your financial literacy, but the soft skills, maybe not so obvious, and yet often a bigger indicator for success in sales. Rarely are we trained on how to develop these skills. Soft skills are also known as emotional intelligence, and maybe you've heard that term. This is an ability for a person to connect, relate, adapt, and self-regulate. It's actually something that PS can be measured. Emotional intelligence is what makes a good broker great. It's what makes a good boss great. Frankly, it's what makes any good relationship great. So what is it exactly? Emotional intelligence in sales is a measure of a person's empathy toward another, and in sales, that happens to be our customers. Curiosity is the number one attribute of someone who is highly emotionally intelligent. And then what do you do with that is you adapt your curiosity to that of another person's personality type or their unique challenge. In sales, we've all heard the saying, more listening and less talking. But it's not just that. It's listening and then adapting. If losing your script is what it takes to connect, we highly encourage that. You need your script to become your customer script. LinkedIn, interestingly, just recently reported that some 60% or greater of employers are now using emotional intelligence questions in interviews, uniquely to measure the skill. And the signs of an emotionally intelligent person is really how they answer questions in a way of being humble, yet honest, and showing confidence, curiosity, and empathy all at the same time. Empathy isn't just caring. It's actually coming across as caring in a way that is believable. So how eloquent can you get candid? Or rather, how candid can you get eloquent is the question. And how do you handle conflict? This is a skill set that really allows a person to be not brutally honest, but empathetically honest. And they are very different things. Shari Harley is an author of a book called Candid Culture. Many of you may have heard her at the NAHU National, or rather State Convention in New Jersey this year. She was the keynote speaker. We talk about her in the class that Colleen's referring to, and it states 99% of your client and employee relationship breakdowns are predictable. So if they're predictable, then clearly they may be avoidable. And what can you do to exercise opportunities to get better at this smoke sign when you see it? So you have to learn how to ask some probing questions. And here are a few that would help build emotional relationship with your customer. How often do you want to hear from me, and in what way? What information do you want, and in what format? Can you imagine, Colleen, sending a 20-page financial evaluation or a legislative update to a customer that hates to read and is relying on you as their broker just to give them the cliff notes? You would have really frustrated that person. How do you know that you made the right choice in hiring me as your broker? How are you being measured, Mr. HR or Mr. CFO, in your role? And what does success look like for you? How can I help you with that? How can I frustrate you and not even know it? I love this one. This is a question I've rarely heard asked. And when I heard Shari Harley say this, it was an aha moment for me. And in our CE, we go over various scripts that are effective to this end. But it's really vulnerability questions and the type of questions that are great for foundational setting the stage in building this trust that we speak of.
Thanks, Wendy. That's very helpful. So one of the hard skills that you've discussed in the class is the importance of best laid plans. So what does this mean in relationship to renewals?
Yeah, great. So interestingly, we hear feedback from time to time from clients who have left their broker or are complaining about their broker, and those are awkward days. But often what we'll hear is that a broker isn't investing year round in the relationship. They're showing up for the renewal. They might be doing an amazing job, but they haven't recognized that the way to be the best that you can be in a relationship is setting a 12-month calendar. And so I've kind of broken down a sample in 4 quarters in the class and what activities a broker could be engaging in to that end. So just to give you a high level, Colleen, in third quarter, and this is assuming we're talking about a January renewing group, and let's pretend it's a large January renewing group. So in third quarter, this is really the game plan quarter where you're interviewing your client, finding out what's new geographically with them or culturally, internally, and you're also educating. You're talking about market trends. What are the new products? Are they a fit? Do you believe in them? It doesn't really matter. It's early education opportunity. Find out about their financial and their benefit tolerances. What new lines of coverage do you perceive they may need, or are they already telling you they need? And then getting that census together clean and early. And the reason why is, frankly, the earlier you get started in that process, the easier it is to get your rates turned around. We all know first quarter is a crazy time of year, and the carriers often use the term garbage in, garbage out. So we want to remember that getting that stuff together early is wonderful. So that's your game plan. Q4 is your make it happen quarter. This is when you should be shopping, doing your spreadsheet, your financial and contribution analysis. You should be resourcing during this quarter. That is leveraging things like electronic open enrollment, electronic open enrollment booklets have been a big hit during the pandemic. Getting resourceful. Who are your centers of influence? What can you bring to the table that's unique? I'll tell you, during COVID, Colleen, we saw a couple of our better brokers buying tents and setting up open enrollment in parking lots. I mean, that's how forward thinking. So getting at it early, a broker's failure to plan, unfortunately, does not become a carrier's emergency. And all too often, it is a scramble and it is a very busy time of year. So this is your making it happen implementation quarter. Then Q1 is one of my favorite quarters, frankly, because this is your proactive one where you can audit yourself. I call this the cleanup quarter. And this is where you want to take a first month bill audit after you've made a plan change or a carrier change. Can't tell you how difficult it is to get a retro enrollment accomplished 6 months later when you discover someone went into the wrong plan. So it's auditing that first month's bill. It's auditing yourself on the compliance things that a client needs, the employer notices, the tax filings. There's a host of things that we actually have a beautiful ERISA calendar that we share where you can help a client recognize their calendar of obligations. So this is a great audit quarter and proactive dialogue about those types of things in the compliance arena. And then finally, Q2 is summer, and this is your get ahead quarter. If it's a self-funded group, this might be when you're doing your mid-year claims review or your mid-year vendor review, but it's also a quarter to get social and creative, to do some things outside of the box. Maybe it's a health fair. And then it's also a wonderful time to do some evaluation on your own business practice as a broker, taking a look at your book of business, deciding if you're getting all the leverage that you need from your general agent, from your centers of influence, educating yourself on what's out there for you that could help you be better at your job. And more, that is a great CRM system, which stands for Customer Relationship Management Tool. And this is where you can log historical information about clients, It can help trigger action on your part to remind you to follow up on simple tasks. And they've come quite a long way, and there's quite a few of them. I would say that it's a great idea to talk to frankly, Colleen, to your department and others like you in the space that have a wide view of what those products look like. But to name a few, Xywave, Bernie Portal, Agency Smart, Salesforce, Benefit Point, they put brokers on steroids. So I would say it's a wonderful opportunity to just get your own house in order for how you're managing your business.
So listening to what you're sharing, it sounds like having a plan by quarter is certainly going to be really helpful. And a lot of times when you're planning like this, it's really so you can be aware of and know where the potential risk may be. And you're really talking about risk from a prospecting perspective. So one of the things that I'm wondering about for these best lead plans, how does this really then help? If you could go into more detail, how does it help with risk aversion?
Yeah. So we all want to avert risk, right? We all know that early listeners are not always early adopters. But if you're talking to your customers about what's trending and what's new, maybe it's not even popular yet, but it's definitely a buzz, the client feels informed, and being informed makes them feel safe. So the key to building trust with a customer is showing them that your finger is on the pulse. Doesn't matter if they adopt or not. There will always be new products. There will always be new laws. Right now, this is particularly sensitive when it comes to compliance and the things that are putting our customers at risk. For example, we've got ARPA, we've got ERISA, we've got ACA. In New Jersey, we have MEWA, and that MEWA is in trouble. So there's so many things that are, I would say, vibrating in our space. With the expansion of election rights alone with ARPA, and the opportunity to enroll in the individual market longer than usual, employers more than ever have risk, right? A large group has the potential for someone getting a subsidy, which will trigger a penalty for them. So we've seen clients, and a lot more than lately, now more than ever, I would say, we've seen clients change brokers when they felt they weren't informed about something that may not have even actually stung them, but the idea that it could have was enough to make them second guess. So the bottom line is you do not have to be an expert. And frankly, you shouldn't be, because some of these things involve certain E&O, but you do not need to be an expert in all things ledge or all things that are new. But you have to be educated enough at a high level to be able to point to the fact that these things exist. They have a theme in the space, and then you need that expert behind you to refer and to resource. So I would say risk aversion is really just getting out in front of what seems scary and talking about the elephant in the room.
Thank you for that. So, Wendy, as I'm listening to you, you're really also talking about everything that you are talking about really has to do with relationships. So I think it's safe to say that during the pandemic, prospecting success has been dramatically different than what we've done before. So what are some of the prospecting habits that brokers could embrace?
Yeah. So in alignment with your last question, Colleen, I think using ledge news as a means to prospect is frankly nothing short of genius. I don't personally believe in fear-based selling, so that's not what I'm suggesting here. But I do believe that a good broker has an obligation to serve and to help people with their pain. And let's face it, legislation is a real pain. Many brokers don't talk about ledge much because it's intimidating. But with some effort, it can be your secret weapon in sales. Interestingly, I have a sense that a lot of the mergers and acquisitions we see in our industry right now has to do with the amount of ledge pain and smaller brokers not feeling that they're keeping up and wanting to align themselves with others that can help them. So using ledge to prospect, I would say less is more. And that's sort of counterintuitive because these are big, scary topics. All you need is the hook, right? The hook that opens the door, that acknowledges there's a new thing that's happening that puts a customer at risk. Once you've got interest, that's when you back your offer to assist with your centers of influence. It could be inviting folks to a webinar. It could be merely a pass-off vendor relationship. And then prospecting in general, Colleen, I would say still follows the fundamentals we all know. And that involves setting a cadence, right? You need to set an appointment with yourself to block out time and have no distractions. And then in that space, there's a lot of things you could do. You could Zoom, You could use Zoom as a blogging tool, which we talk about in the class quite a bit. You could do email drip campaigns, which again, less is more, small bites of information sent over multiple weeks or, sessions. You can do phone blitzes. You can lean to centers of influence for referrals. I have heard telemarketing has been very successful in the pandemic. It's not something that a lot of brokers are paying for, but the ones that I am working with that are finding it helpful have been tried and true and say that it is one of their most favored ways to find new customers. And then finally, we talked about the Zoom, but that also kind of encompasses blogging. So you can blog, but you can also vlog, which is video blogging, where you're doing pre-recorded sessions and putting it out there on social media. Video blogging actually has lots of advantages. You can be super personal with it and super broad. So if you're using social media to go broad, there are strategies to up your visibility, which is really important because what's the point if no one can see it? Some of this falls under what we call search engine optimization. That is a paid service to make sure that what you post in a social setting is seen or on the internet. But a lot of these things are free. We all know algorithms and the chatter around if you like or comment on somebody's Facebook page, for example, that will bring you more of the same. And some of what we talk about in our class is exactly how to make sure that you optimize your visibility with social media.
So you were talking earlier too, you had named a couple of statistics where one of them was that 99% of, I think the client activity you were saying is predictable. So here you are again talking about statistics and how to leverage social media to get your message across and make that available to everyone. So I think that's a huge important concept. And I know you go over this in more detail during the class. So it's definitely something to learn more about. What I wanted to do though now is kind of switch gears a little bit and focus more on soft habits or soft skills. So how do you define soft skills?
Yeah, sure. So soft skills is really your ability to read a prospect or customer or person. Is who you're dealing with an analytic? Are they a driver? Are they heart motivated? Are they mind motivated? And can you be empathetic to them and vulnerable by having a conversation about mutual expectations? What is success going to look like for this person? What does failure look like? What motivates their decisions? And do you have permission to be honest if you see something in their organization that's getting in the way of their success? Can you also, in the early days of your relationship, suggest that they give you honest feedback with the promise that you'll thank them for it, that you're not looking for, you want this to be a mutually respectful flow of information and help each other. So soft skills can be our instincts, but they're often biased by our own beliefs. So candid questions let you verify what's important to your customer. Don't always trust your gut. Candid questions will allow you to verify that you are on track with what they expect and what success looks like for them.
So you and I know, Wendy, we've talked about this a lot, where we both feel that the way that we do business is forever changed. And that's really because the pandemic has changed how we prospect. And I don't really see it going back to pre-pandemic activities. So you've spent a little bit of time here talking about some of the digital options that are available. And I think what's really important is that digital strategies are critical for attracting prospects and setting appointments today. And will continue to be so, I think, in the post-pandemic world as we all, again, are, coming back into our offices and so on. Utilizing video conferencing platforms, and you had mentioned Zoom and a couple of others, to communicate with clients and prospects is certainly part of our daily lives. And I think it's going to continue to be so in the future, even once, face-to-face appointments do come back. I think there's always going to be a place for it. You talked about Zoom in the CE, and you've mentioned it a couple of times here as well. So what are some Zoom do's and don'ts that you've witnessed, and what would you say are some healthy habits that we could use to be able to be better at our video networking?
Yeah, great question. So the do's, we'll talk about the Zoom do's. Do be present. That is probably number one. Presence is it's everything. When you can't be in person and you're using a video camera instead, it is so hard to genuinely connect. You may think you're present, but you don't look it. And I will tell you that this happens more often in the early days of Zoom. I've seen great improvement in this arena, but we've got to look at the camera. The camera, if you have an aftermarket camera that's not centered to your face and maybe it's looking at you from a side angle or above you, consider that how you appear on the other end is possibly disengaged. So it's looking straight at the camera. And this is when we're talking about sales, Colleen, not to be confused with, internal staff meetings where there's more forgiveness, but in a sales arena, look at the camera. Try to lose your script, because if you're reading a screen, it's very evident. Try to have your head centered in the box so we're not looking up or down or side. Make sure you have good lighting, because if all I can see is a shadow, that's not great. Is your attire professional enough? Is your background okay? If you're live, number one, don't multitask. Don't text. Don't look at a second screen. If you need a moment to do any of those things, close your camera and announce that you're about to do so. Basically, you have to ask yourself, if I was in a conference room with this person, what would I be doing? Would I be multitasking? What would my body language look like? Am I embodying those same things using this camera? And I think the camera kind of tricks us into thinking no one can really see us or that we're not being judged, but we are. So the do that you can do to be a Zoom rock star, and it's actually my preference, is to pre-record. Now you don't have to worry about all the things we just talked about going wrong and in the background. Pre-recording, setting a meeting up in Zoom and inviting nobody and then hitting record start now gives you an opportunity to blog or personalize a message and delete it if it's wrong, save it if it's right, and you can upload that onto social media. You can send it in an email. I have a realtor actually that was sending me some information about investment properties, which in this crazy market does not seem to be working out. But regardless, I loved his style. He did Zoom calls at night. They were personalized. Hey, Wendy, it's Brian. I'm in the office after hours. I wanted to tell you about what's coming up on the market, the trends, my beliefs. Tomorrow I have this, this, and this, but if you have a chance to talk, this would be a good time. It made me feel like I had a conversation with him, and he was so on. He smiled. He had his stuff together. It was so much better than a voicemail for me. So that's how, there's a huge advantage to taking that Zoom record button and putting it to work. The Zoom don'ts. Don't be a Zoom zombie. This comes from being on Zoom too much, and it is a real thing. Carrier reps talk about it. Some of our own staff, we're on a lot of trainings. We're on a lot of these meetings. Stanford University, in fact, just did a study, Colleen, that said that too much Zoom can actually create anxiety. And they're measuring this especially more now in women than men. Part of it's coming from our own self-criticism when we see a reflected image of ourselves, like a mirror, as we're trying to interact with others. Women are harder on themselves. We're seeing our appearance and it's distracting. Some companies are embracing actually going to mandatory closed camera days in recognition that some of us learn better when we aren't visually distracted by things such as ourselves or our coworkers' backgrounds. So it can be really exhausting. And think about students. This is why it's coming out of Stanford University. They're there for long stretches, and they're talking now about Zoom coming out with an enhanced version that's going to measure eye movement to give you an alert like, hey, your attentiveness is dropping. We can tell by your eyes. So it's a lot of pressure. Students are zooming out, and I think corporate America's definitely starting to feel that. So being aware of it, taking a break, and really using it when you recognize that you need to connect with a person in a sales environment would be probably a good break for many companies to recognize that it is a lot on the eyes, and we're confining our face to this little box. That's exhausting. It's not natural. And I think some of the etiquette surrounding Zoom is being worked out as we speak, Colleen.
Thank you. So in addition to hard and soft skills, the art of building relationships through the use of emotional intelligence, it can have a significant impact on success of a salesperson. It's everything that you've been talking about today. So Wendy, in the class, I know you go over a pretty famous book that was written by Gary Chapman, and the name of the book is The 5 Love Languages. How does this correlate to business?
Yeah, so it's a great book, and it's been rewritten for business as well as a host of other things. But the book purports that there are 5 dominant love languages, that each of us have one primary and one secondary. And knowing what yours is and then recognizing that yours may not be the same as another will help increase this thing we call emotional intelligence. So this is a book about the behavior that we see in others and that we perceive from our own biases as a young child, what love or appreciation means for us. So for some people, one of the love languages, words of affirmation. Hey, you do great work. You're doing great in school. You're the best salesperson we've ever had. You are a rock star, whatever it is. That person learned to feel appreciated by words of affirmation, and that's what they need to continue to feel that. Others, it might be an act of service. What can I take off your plate? What can I do to make your day easier? So that's its unique language. And then the others are gift giving, quality time, and even physical touch. And that's a weird one because in business, physical touch isn't the obvious. Think quantity, not quality. So someone that wants quality time wants that one-on-one with you. Someone that's about physical touch wants you to pop in, like their stuff, regularly touch them in a way that makes them feel that they're constantly remembered. This is the parent that, calls to say good night, or when they go on vacation, they can't ever, not make that touch it's a ritual kind of a thing. So again, we're taught early in life by our parents or others what makes us feel valued. And then the mistake we make is that we later project our love language to another, and they miss the gesture completely because we're not speaking the same language. So in business, here's an example, Colleen. You have a customer who happens to value quality time, and you keep popping in unannounced because you're in the area, so to speak. And they say to themselves, well, that doesn't make me feel very valued. She's only coming here because it's Friday and I'm halfway to the beach, or whatever the narrative is in their minds. They want quality. They want that one-on-one because they matter, not because it's a convenience to you. Or maybe it's gift giving. Maybe if you're a manager and you give a little gift to your staff member who's doing great work, because you thought of them that day. And the irony is that's also missed because all that person really wants is to hear they're doing great work. Maybe there are words of affirmation, or maybe they just want you to say, hey, save the cup of coffee. I don't need the gift. I don't need the present. What I need is you to recognize that I've been working to 6 o'clock every night, and I need you to help me by taking something off my plate. That would be an act of service. So you can see how in business, knowing what your HR manager or your decision maker speaks to and responding in kind is going to help. If your HR person is a person who needs words of affirmation and you go over that person's head and that prevents them from getting the atta girl or the atta guy for the job well done, you've lost an opportunity to help. So there's countless examples, but it's a great book. It's great for self-evaluation, and it also can help you tune in to the sensitivities and needs of others.
So a lot of what you've been talking about are certainly healthy habits, obviously, soft and hard skills are in building relationships. But there has to be an aspect to how do you figure out if this is really going to work? So when I think about that, it's really monitoring and measuring your activities and how that allows you to really see what strategies work best and then which ones may not. So what do you think, Wendy, is the most important thing about tracking? And really, how do you keep it real?
Yeah, great. Well, the most important thing about tracking is actually doing it. And honestly, it doesn't matter how you're doing it, notebook, tech, or otherwise, you can't manage what you're not measuring. And so you need to have a system that is something that is a living, breathing document where you're keeping track of things that are important to a customer. You can call that a customer profile. You can just put these things on a shared drive so that your team can see it, because you alone is not who serves that customer. You and your team really need this information. So a great CRM system is going to do this for you, but there are many ways: calendar reminders, staff meetings, hard drives, what have you. But educating yourself and your staff on what's important and keeping these documents up to date with what's changing, because let's face it, motivations change and evolve over time. That is the key to an emotionally intelligent team, which leads to the best customer experience. Memory alone is pretty dangerous, and we all know that. And then finally, Colleen, another piece of tracking, which has less to do with any one client and more to do with the entirety of your book of business, is to commit to an annual evaluation at a minimum. Frankly, you could probably do this quarterly if you felt, but commit to an annual evaluation of what your book of business looks like. Typically, we find that our clients fall into one of 4 boxes. You may have heard the term 4-box evaluation, but to put it in a quick summary, you've got 4 categories of customers. Number 1, high pay, high reward, meaning you're making a lot of money from them and working with them is very emotionally rewarding. High reward emotionally. That might mean that they are a great referral source. They're just nice people. The next one is high pay, low reward. That means making a lot of money off of them, but emotionally you're not connecting. Maybe they're difficult. Maybe they've been either too quiet, which is scary, or maybe even bordering on abusive at times. This is a red alert. Emotional intelligence is needed. You don't want to lose the money. So can you move this customer over to being a better connection? This is what this evaluation is all about. So you want to list these out, put your customers in any one of these 4 categories. So we've got first 2 high pay, one's high reward, one's low reward in terms of the emotional connection. And then the next 2 are low pay and low pay, high reward. So this is, you're not making a lot of money, but they're such nice people. They make you feel good. They give you referrals. They are happy. They may be connected to another customer, but working with them is a pleasure despite what you're earning. And then you've got your low pay, low reward. So emotional intelligence here may not be enough, because if they're not nice and you're not making a lot of money, unless you can get them to the nice, to the influence, to the point where they would do you a favor and refer you to someone, it may be time to let them go or charge a fee. So when I see brokers putting tracking to good use, they're looking at this. They are taking a look at what a client means to them emotionally, which is your soft skill, and I would say the hard fact financials. You're marrying that together. You're making sure that you're being proactive as opposed to reactive, and you're being tuned in about where you can do some emotional work to move a good client into the great category. The best brokers we work with recognize this is the secret sauce, being authentic and reminding yourself to follow up with what you've learned about a customer. That's also really important, because it's not enough, Colleen, to say that you care. You have to show you do. And that's by setting that plan in action. And that requires discipline and tracking on a.
Wendy, thank you so much for joining me today. All of this information that you have gone over has been very, very helpful. I know you and I have had a couple of conversations over the last year, and the conversations we've had lately has been around, there certainly seems to be an undercurrent of excitement as our communities and our businesses have begun reopening and everyone is beginning this process of rebuilding. The healthy habits advice that you reviewed today has been excellent practical advice to success. So again, thank you for that. Whether all of us realize it or not, our habits have a big impact on our overall productivity, our confidence, and certainly our well-being. And Wendy's touched on a couple of those things today. One thing's for sure, we all know that running an insurance business is no easy task. So it's important to build healthy habits so that you can be most effective and certainly successful. You are the author of your success story. If you found some of these tips to be helpful that Wendy's gone over today, try implementing 1 or 2 of these habits this month and see how this impacts your overall productivity. As I've mentioned a couple of times during our discussion today, this is a new CE course that Wendy actually instructs. If you'd like to learn more or even attend an upcoming encore class that Wendy will be hosting, please complete the survey in the video description below. This would also be a great opportunity to invite any of your sales folks as well as service people that may be on your team. As always, should you have any questions, please reach out to your dedicated Savoy team and continue to use the resources that are available on our website at savoyassociates.com. From all of us at Savoy, stay healthy and safe. Thank you for joining us today.